as a creative writing teacher, I used to see people who were terrified of reading out their work in front of other people. And it's terrifying, isn't it, Rachel?
Yes. Yes, I'm there.
I remember
totally.
The first time I read my poetry out to anybody was a poetry, like a local poets thing, with Wendy Cope sitting there, like on the timer, because we only had 5 minutes each, and she was on the timer. I was like, oh, God. So it's a really difficult thing. But I think reading out is a great way of critiquing your own work, because when you read it on the page, you don't always see the mistakes. I don't. I'm like, oh right, I made that mistake. Fine.
You get word blind, don't you? When you've
but when you read it out loud, you've got to turn it into something else, and you concentrate more on what you're doing. Then that way, I think you actually stand a better chance of working out if it's any good or not. Now, it doesn't matter if it's not good. If you're reading it out as part of a ritual, it doesn't matter, because your gift is from you to the universe. It's to the gods. It's to the world. It doesn't matter, because you've tried it, you've written it, and you're in the process of translating it into something in the air. But what will happen is that you will start to see the things that you do, and you will start to work out things like pacing, because you will have to pace, different stories have exciting bits and sad bits. And by reading it out, you suddenly start to see where all of that happens.
It does make a difference. It really does. I mean, I don't write poetry or fiction. My brain would explode, I think. But I do write chants for spell work, and I have found that you can write it down, and it reads fine in your head. But it's only once you read it out loud that you think, no, that's not got the right rhythm. So reading it aloud does make a huge difference.
And it's the Holly King and the Oak Child, for example. There's a bit where the Holly King goes storming through the forest, and he finds the child, and there's moments of tension, and then there's bits of action, and you've got to pace it. And sometimes, I read the worst one. The worst one by far was Beltane. I don't get on very well. We don't work, me and Beltane. Awesome kids, I'm like, oh, look at all this. And of course, there's. I'm glad it's past 9 o'clock now. There's a great deal of sexuality in Beltane, which when you're trying to write a story, it's a bit like, oh, this has all gone a bit 50 Shades and is really quite uncomfortable. So I wrote it and then was like, I can't read, I just, and it was awful. I read it out and I was like, no, because it was really cold, because I was trying not to do things that were cheesy and corny. So I had to then go away and I completely rewrote the Beltane one, because it just didn't work. And as soon as I started to read it out, I realized that it wasn't going to work. And I did want to have that coldness in that. I didn't want it to be fruity. And so I had to find a way of, I brought in a narrator who was a little bit coy, who didn't want to talk about that kind of thing. And you find out why at the end of the story. They kind of gloss over it. And so, it's that. Otherwise, I just would have written the story, kind of left it, been a bit ashamed of it, and gone, no. But by having to read it, it made me do something completely different. Yeah. So it's a very, very good thing for everybody to do, I think.